Hey guys, Chris here. Today's video, we're going to take a deep dive at the whole Jighead Minnow and Mid-Strolling presentation. I'm going to go over tackle, setup, and then just how to fish it. To give some context, it's early September. We've had some colder evenings. These fish are starting to get a bit more aggressive again. We've had some west winds that cooled the lake down, so there's a bunch of alewife that are pushed up in this little area, as well as some salmon and trout, which I end up landing in this video as well. I think these fish would eat the Jighead Minnow regardless of what they were eating, but in this situation there's a ton of alewife around, so food's not hard to come by. You could throw something like an A-rig or a swim bait that's moving faster and you'd probably get some bites, but this just presents an easy meal when you have that minnow just shaking right above them nice and slow. This is the one fish catch in this video that's actually not on a Jighead Minnow. I was drop shotting here and somehow hooked into a steelhead. This is one of the perks of fishing the Great Lakes. I had no intentions of catching a salmon or a trout today, but they surprise you sometimes. Bait-wise, I've been using pretty much two baits. I've got the Baby Z2 and I've got the 4-inch scented jerk shads. The Baby Z2 I've got on a 1/4 ounce Northland MVP head, and this one's tied with a regular, I think I have a uni knot tied on there, but this one I use a lot when the fish are right under the boat, because with that knot tied directly, I can hang it completely level in the water column. The other one I've been using is the Gamakatsu Horizon head with the 4-inch scented jerk shads. This one's the 5/32 ounce. This is the 1/5. I've used the 1/5 when the wind's blowing a little bit more. When the wind's not blowing too hard, I'll use that 5/32 ounce, even out to like 25 feet of water, because I can hover it above the fish's head a lot better. On these, I've been tying a loop knot. I don't know how well you can see that. And that just helps when I'm shaking the bait, give this bait a lot more body roll, so it's going to rotate back and forth in the water and kind of flutter like a dying bait fish. These fish are going to set up different day by day and different based on your body of water. These fish were sitting maybe a foot off the bottom and sometimes belly to the bottom. It was hard to see them on live scope, but when you fired a bait out there, 10 would lift off the bottom and start chasing it down. I wasn't making real long casts at these fish, maybe 30, 40, 50 feet at most, and instead of letting it get down to them and keeping the rod tip down and shaking the slack in there to get the body roll, I was actually kind of just swinging the bait down in front of them. If I shook it too hard, it would kind of put them off sometimes, and sometimes that slow swing just right above their head, minimal action, would get more bites. There's so many different baits on the market for this presentation now. You've got stuff like the Depth Sakamata shad, which has those wings on the side and will give that bait a ton of movement, ton of body roll. My favorite is definitely the Z2 or the scented jerk shads. That Elastec material is tough, but it's soft and pliable yet, where even though I'm not shaking the rod hard, there's a lot of natural movement in the water from that bait. This is what I was looking at on live scope. We've got a couple fish up higher suspended, a couple right by the bottom, and my goal was just to keep that bait swinging maybe 2-3 feet above them. If there's one thing that makes this presentation so deadly, it's how subtle it is. If you throw a normal boot tail out there like a Kitech, a Rage Swimmer, an Easy Shiner, that tail's kicking a ton. If you've watched alewife or shiners or any type of bait fish swim in the water, they don't move like that. They almost move in little darting motions. Z2 on there. Quarter ounce head on this one. I've got the 5/32 ounce Horizon head on the other rod. It's blowing like crazy out here. And they are just loaded up out here. So I've thrown this on pretty much every rod I own now, and this one's by far my favorite. This is a Daiwa BLX. It's a 6/8 medium light. It's got a nice soft tip to it, but it shuts down into a lot of power pretty fast. Shorter rod, I can make more precise casts. As I've said before, I think this is a technique where preference on rod is more important than having something super specific. A lot of the Japanese anglers on the tours are only fishing 6.3, 6.4, 6.5 rods. Some guys are fishing 7.6s. It's all what you are comfortable with. I prefer the 6.8. I can make accurate casts, and I'm not moving that bait a ton when I'm shaking the rod versus a 7.6 where I'd probably be moving the bait way more than I should be. Precise casting is definitely paramount for this presentation, but I do have a little trick. Say I make a cast, I'm 4 or 5 feet off target. Now this doesn't work all the time, but if I give that rod a real hard pop, sometimes those fish will notice it, they'll react to it and come check it out. A smallmouth's eyesight is a hell of a lot better than mine is. I mean, they are an elite predator in my opinion, and they'll pick up on a bait a lot further away than you think they will. Here's bonus fish number 2. Got to keep in mind, salmon are eating the alewife too.
That one's not bad.
Honestly, I don't know how my little Elf Angler spybait rod and maybe 100 yards of 10-pound braid with an 8-pound leader held up to this fish, but I got it in. At this point, the fish was tired out, and I really didn't even have the power or leverage to lift this fish up to get him into the net. Decided to interrupt my bass fishing. Off the Angler drop shot rod, shaking a minnow, and we get this big boy. Pretty dope. Now, live scope obviously is super beneficial for this presentation, but it's definitely not required. I want to say down in Tennessee on the bluff walls, they called it tight lining, where essentially they would take an 1/8 ounce jig head, 1/4 ounce jig head, and a similar minnow bait like this, and just let that bait pendulum swing back to the boat. From what I know, that's something those guys down there have been doing for a very, very long time. You can also fish a Jighead Minnow completely vertically under the boat. I'm pretty sure this was originally made popular by the Lindners in Minnesota as a walleye presentation, And then Jeff Gustafson of Canada on the Elite Series won an Elite Series event doing this, and a few years later actually won the Bassmaster Classic doing it as well. There's a bunch of different names for that. I know the Canadian boys and the Minnesota guys call it moping, and down south they call it Damiki Rigging. The concept of actually casting the bait out though and hitting the slack and making that body roll, called Mid-Strolling, originated in Japan. They don't fish this necessarily as just a deep water technique like we do here though. They'll fish that real shallow as well. If you really want to go down a rabbit hole, just start looking into the whole Japanese bass fishing community. Those guys are leaps and bounds ahead of what we're doing.
Shed with one of these every cast. Wild day so far.
There's only a couple minutes left in this video here, so I'm gonna quit yapping. If you're still watching, thank you, and enjoy the rest of the video. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. Hopefully I can film many more days like this soon, because this was a fun one. See ya.